Welcome to the history of the DunderBall League. Season 1. The DunderBall League 2020 had just about everything you could ever ask in a reality TV show. It had a lot of drama, had a lot of arguing, fighting, complaining, laughing, rivalries, corruption, collusion, stupidity. Pretty much anything that you could ever ask for in a TV show, a fantasy league, a movie, a book. You got it all in one right here, all in the first season. So let's take a quick dive into exactly what happened in the first season of the DunderBall League. Now before we get into the ins and outs of what made the 2020 DunderBall season so great, let's meet the 8 guys that made this season possible, starting off with no other than B-Man Brennan Ellis. Now as most of the league stands at about 5'8" through 6'1", Brennan comes in at about 4'9", but there's a lot of emotion inside of that little body. Brennan brought a lot of anger, a lot of compassion, a lot of really all kinds of things to the league. One of the reasons that this league was so fun was just because every week there's going to be something that Brennan is not happy about, and he's going to let you know, whether it's Paul not setting a lineup, anybody not setting a lineup, or even if Paul does set his lineup, there's going to be an issue, and this little 4'9" monster is going to let you know about it. Now next up, we actually have Brennan's rival himself, Paul the Thumb Matthews. Paul is not good at a lot of things, but one thing that he is absolutely terrible at is fantasy football. One thing that he's actually pretty good at, though, is giving me a nice little laugh every once in a while. Paul's good for the league for the funnies. Whether you're laughing at the way he sets his lineup, the way he drafts his trade offers, or if he just has a nice little joke every once in a while, Paul's a fun guy to have around and a really easy guy to beat. When you see Paul Matthews in your schedule, you just celebrate. You don't gotta stress over if you're gonna win. You don't gotta worry about setting your lineup. It's really just a stress-free week and another one in the win column. So it's really good having Paul Matthews around for all kinds of reasons, but this guy sucks at fantasy football, no matter what that overstuffed Care Bear says. Now next up, we got a guy who still thinks he's 15 years old, rocks a Justin Bieber haircut at 25 years old, and still rocks a youth medium shirt even though everybody knows he's an adult large. This guy loves Ohio State football, and he will let you know about it in the douchiest way possible. He did have a pretty good season, even though he choked it all the way at the end. Alex Clark, hell of a fantasy football player, really bad sports debater though, has the worst takes in the league. Next up, we have one of my favorite guys in the league, a guy who contributed so much to my fantasy football team, Nick Miller, who may or may not be a robot, not sure. He does malfunction very often, makes very bad trades, sometimes says things that are about a week to a month late, or just make absolutely no sense at all. Sometimes he has water poured on a circuit board and just fucking goes ballistic. Nick Miller was not engaged in the league whatsoever. He threw his team. He did not try to win a game, didn't set his lineup, trying to get the first pick of the draft. Did not have it. He's obviously not all there, but we love him, Nick Miller. I figured it was fitting to put myself after Nick Miller because Nick Miller and myself basically shared a team every Wednesday night. I would give him like a bag of chips, or I would give him a tip about life, and he would give me the best player on his roster. So basically all you need to know about me was I traded all year. I traded my entire team the entire time. The only thing bigger than my hunger for trades is my hunger for food. I have a nice little beer belly. Nothing too crazy, but I got a cute little gut going for me. And an appetite for trades, will you? Next we got Matt the Swinge Swag Dagger Swinginger. This guy did not care about this league whatsoever. He did not talk. He had his mouth zip-tied shut. All we could hear was the revving of his Harley Davidson coming from the garage. He was all about the business, no trash talk, no shenanigans, no hullabaloo, just strictly victories. He made one trade, it was terrible, didn't do anything in free agency, still had one hell of a season without talking or giving any effort to the league whatsoever. He is a modern day wild hog, and you gotta love this guy. Got a lot of moxie. Next we actually have the roommate of Match the Swinginger Swag Dagger III, Vance Ellis, military man, coming out of Tennessee, also really big advocate of the LGBTQ community. Vance, I don't know if he gave a shit about this league or not. Sometimes he was very into it, very emotional about it, very into arguing about it. And then some days he just said, fuck it, I don't care, I'm not going to set my lineup in the most important game of the season. This guy is very hard to read. I don't know what to think about him. He has a lot of football knowledge, and I think he is just more into arguing with Clark about the Bears and with Brennan about whose team is more bad. Last but not least, we have an incredible story here. The best commissioner that I have ever had in fantasy football, Warren Cornelius, makes the league, wins the league at 57 years old. This guy is an ageless wonder. He was supposed to be the only guy that really knew what he was doing because he's the only one who's done a Dynasty League. I've never seen somebody act like they know so much about something and know so little and get so damn lucky. This guy doesn't know any of the rules to his own league, yet he exploits them. It's very tricky, this guy. Yeah, but he won the league at 57 years old. Can you believe that? Crazy. So now that you know everybody that's in the league, let's see how the league started. First thing that we did was go through an auction draft, something that nobody in the league had done except for Warren, so none of us had any idea what the fuck we were doing. We were just throwing money out there to players, signing them to deals, weren't really sure what we were doing. A lot of people really screwed it up, especially Paul Matthews. This dude signs Austin Eckler to a 1-year, $45 million deal because he doesn't know how to use the app and he's doing it on his phone. Outside of that, there were a lot of bad contracts. Brennan signed Saquon to like a $56 million deal. Patrick Mahomes cost Paul about $50 million. Paul really just did a bad job. And then you have guys like Nick Miller who just didn't sign anybody at all. So the auction draft was a complete mess, but you kind of had an idea of who had a good team when you came out of it and who was going to do bad that season. Now, one of the biggest things in this league that made it really fun were trades. And the first big trade that happened was actually minutes before the Thursday night football game, and it actually didn't get through in time, so these guys didn't have these players for this Thursday night game. But we're sitting in McHugh's, and Warren and Matt decide to make a trade, and Matt says, fuck it, I don't want the best receiver in the league on my team anymore. I don't want David Johnson, who turned out to be a league whore and just was on every single team. I think he was on 6 teams. Matt said, fuck it to those guys. Why would I want Devontae Adams when I can have Joe Mixon on a $35 million contract and I can have Odell Beckham Jr.? Are you kidding me? And that may be why Matt didn't make another trade the rest of the year, because he basically won more in the league. Now, there were a lot of other pretty bad trades that happened in this league, but one continuous one was me and Nick Miller every Wednesday night when I was bored at study tables. I would text Nick Miller, and I'd say, hey man, what do you got for me? And he would say, well, I got this guy named Darren Waller. I got this young kid named Joe Burrow. I have this receiver named Cooper Kupp. And all I ask in return is a player like Le'Veon Bell, maybe Austin Hooper. And if that's too much to ask, I'll throw you the first pick of the draft. And every time I would say yes. I would say, yes, Nick Miller, I agree with you. I agree with you, Millerbot. Let's make that trade. And Nick Miller basically put all of his eggs into my basket and said, I'm a part of your team now. These players that I like, they're going to you for nothing. And I really appreciated that from Nick Miller. And who could forget what was voted on as the worst trade in the league in the season? I think Nick Miller may have already given all of his good players to me, so he went to Vance and was like, hey man, would you want Calvin Ridley and Lamar Jackson? And Vance was like, yeah, I mean, if the asking price isn't too high, what do you want for him? And Nick Miller essentially said nothing. He said, you can just have these guys. They're not happy here. And Vance said, okay, and he took that trade. So really, Nick Miller sucks at fantasy football. Now, as the season went on, there was a lot of big arguments, but there was always one little tiny guy that was ahead of him, and that was B-Man. B-Man did have a good fantasy football team for a while that season. He started off hot. He was always in the top 4, looking to be in the playoffs, and he just wasn't happy about it. There was always a rule that he thought was bullshit. He always thought somebody needed to set their lineup. And, he was very cocky. He thought he was running this league, and he thought he could say and do whatever he wanted. And then everything came crashing down. He went on a 5-game losing streak. And one of the big parts of it was a guy actually setting his lineup, which is really the most ironic thing of all time. The guy that was screaming for people to set their lineups, getting so angry when one guy does, because it just backfired right in his face. Now, speaking of someone that went on a 5-game losing streak, let's talk about a guy who ended up on a 5-game winning streak that did get him into the playoffs. But first, the trade that honestly started it all, Paul Matthews, right? This absolute scumbag takes advantage of Warren when he's drunk. Warren's sad. His team's like 1-4, 1-5. They suck. They're horrible. He's supposed to be the commissioner. He's gonna win the league. No, right? His team's doing horrible. He's getting drunk. He makes it known. Paul reaches out to him and says, hey, I know things aren't looking good for either of us. We're the worst 2 teams in the league, right? I'll give you Michael Thomas, $45 million a year. All you got to give me is Clyde Edwards-Helaire, the best rookie in the league right now, and your first rounder next year. Warren, I don't know why he took this deal. He didn't know why he took this deal the next day, but he takes the deal, right? Horrible trade, horrible job by Warren. Loses money, loses his draft pick, gets a player that hasn't even been playing, yet it somehow works out for him. Now, one other rivalry outside of the Brennan and Paul rivalry, which was very odd, it was pretty entertaining as well, but had nothing to do with fantasy football, really. Alex Clark and Vance Ellis argued just about every single day. The Colts beat the Bears, and then the Bears had a better record, so Alex Clark states, 4-2 is better than 3-3. Mathematically correct. The team was not better, very clearly, but mathematically, Alex Clark was correct. 4-2 is better than 3-3. And then the Bears would lose, and they'd lose, and they'd lose, and the Colts would win, and they'd win, and they'd win, and it turned out, 4-3 is equal to 4-3, 4-4 better than 5-3, 4-6 better than 6-3. Vance wouldn't let it go. Clark wouldn't let it go. This was just 2 guys butting heads in a fantasy football group text every single weekend with nothing to do with fantasy football. And it was fun to watch, let me tell you. It never got old. Now, the final rivalry that wasn't really a rivalry, these 2 guys actually loved each other, was the battle for last place, the battle for the first overall pick, which neither of them would get, is Nick Miller versus Paul Matthews. Neither of them set their lineup all year long, right? Nick Miller doesn't set his lineup because he's trying to get the first overall pick, which he traded to me earlier in the season and forgot about. Paul Matthews is trying to lose all of his games to get the first overall pick so he can draft Jamar Chase. Well, Paul decides, as we all know, that he's going to set his lineup against Brennan so that Brennan can't make the playoffs, and Paul pops off, beating Brennan and, keeping him out of the playoffs. But then Paul is so stupid that he forgot to unset his lineup, sets his lineup the next 3 weeks, and ends up winning games, making him the second worst team in the league. Nick Miller is the worst team in the league, and I get the first overall pick. These guys are bad. So from that stems the 2 most colliding personalities. The Brennan and Paul rivalry really was the life of this league. The 2 backbones of this league were Brennan versus Paul and drunk trades. Brennan, 5-game losing streak, misses the playoffs by 1 game, and it really was just from that game against Paul. I mean, obviously it was from other things, but the game against Paul was a free win for everybody else. His team was actually horrible, right? But he didn't set his lineup, so it didn't matter. If he had set his lineup, he probably still would have been horrible. But he set it against Brennan, and not only beat Brennan, but beat the brakes off and put up like 180 points, right? So this is a big thing. Brennan quits the league about 6 times. Paul thinks it's hilarious. We finally come to the conclusion that the not setting lineup thing is going to be an issue. So neither of these guys make the playoffs, and we all think the rivalry is over until we all get drunk in the garage and come up with an idea. We need a wax bowl. We need a battle between these 2. The rivalry is too hot right now. We can't end it. Wax bowl during the playoffs. So the Wax Bowl starts during the playoffs, and these guys are going at it for 2 weeks. Whoever has the highest score 2 weeks in wins, and more people cared about this than the actual playoffs, let me tell you. This thing was a big deal. Manual scores put in. Everybody was paying attention to it. After the first week, Paul had a massive lead on Brennan. It looked like Brennan just could not get past the haunting of Paul Matthews. Paul just had his number. Paul was beating the shit out of Brennan. Brennan even went to the extent of saying, we made the bet of waxing our chest, our body hair, and our gooch. He said, I'm not doing my gooch anymore. And it was a big deal. He quit the league again. And then the next week came around, and Brennan's team absolutely went off, dominated Paul, fucking obliterated him. The craziest comeback ever. And the bet was back on at that point, let me tell you. And it happened. At the banquet, Paul laid down. Brennan threw some wax strips on him. Paul screamed. He cried. He bled. Brennan got the redemption. He had such a bad year, and I feel like this was a big win for him. He really needed this, and Paul did not get the last laugh. So now it's time for the playoffs, what we've all been waiting for. we got the 1 seed, Alex Clark, who's dominated the league all year, going up against the 4 seed, me, who has a pretty average team, but we're nothing special, right? On the other side of the bracket, we got the 2 seed, Matt, the Swinge Swag Dagger Swing Ginger, going up against Old Man Warren, who can't even stay up late enough to watch the night games, because he eats supper at 4 and goes to bed at 7, right? And we get 2 upsets, okay? Warren is just on an absolute hot streak right now, riding Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams. Completely dominates because those 2 guys are just on fire right now. There's nothing the Swinge could do. He goes down, rides his Harley all the way back to Tennessee. See you later. See you next year. You suck. You're done. On the other side of the bracket, Alex Clark, who has the best team in the league, just completely overthinks, says, you know, I have David Montgomery, who's putting up 30 points a game right now. But I really like this T.Y. Hilton guy. You know, he's a good story. So he puts T.Y. Hilton in his flex. I don't have that great of a team, so I say, you know, I gotta make some risks here. I gotta try something. I ride David Johnson to the fucking moon. The guy who's been on 6 teams, who I've never played. The dude drops 35. Upset of the season. We got a Warren Cornelius versus Nick Ellis final. So we get to the finalists, not the 2 teams that anyone predicted, but this is the 2 teams they got, all right? We go down to Tennessee to see Vance for Christmas. We don't have phones. We don't have television. We don't have anything because somebody decided to blow up the AT&T building in Nashville for some reason. But we found a way. We went to B-Dubs, the heart of America, and we watched this game, all the games, the finals. It was here, what we all been waiting for. And I get off to a big lead. You know, I pop off. I took some risks again. I played David Johnson, and he got 35 again, you know. But one thing I did that backfired a little bit, or a lot of it. It lost me the whole season. I overthought, you know. I thought, you know, Justin Herbert versus Denver, that's an easy 25. Josh Allen against New England, last time he got 12 there. He might not do very well. I played Herbert, he got 18. Josh Allen got 40, would have won me the game. Warren, on the other hand, cripply Warren, walking around with a walker. He just does, you know, what everybody else would do. Play Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams, they'll do fine. Psych, they are playing a night game against the Titans with 15-mile-per-hour wind. There's no way they're going to throw the ball. Bullshit. They each score 4 touchdowns, 40 points each. Warren wins his own league. I don't know if it's fair. I don't know if he cheated. I don't know what happened. But somehow, at 57 years old, Tom Brady, eat your fucking heart out. Warren Cornelius is the DunderBall League Season 1 champion. We don't know how much longer Warren's going to be around. All right, he's an old bag of bones, but he did it in his first season. He got himself a jacket. Great commissioner. Guy absolutely deserved it. Congrats to Warren Cornelius. So the season ends, and this is where the power rankings lie now. The champion Warren at 1. The runner-up me at 2. Alex Clark, who probably has the best team in the league, at 3. Matt, the Silent Killer, Swag Dagger, Swing Ginger, the Swinge, 4. Little Guy B-Man at 5. Army Toy Soldier Vance at 6. The Thumb Paul Matthews at 7. And Robot Nick Miller at 8. So the season comes to a close, but in a Dynasty League, you know it does not end there. There's new rules, there's new things going on. A lot has to change. It's a weird year. We're adding 2 new players. And the new cap, 185 mil, it was at 198. Big difference. People got to make trades. They got to cut players. They got to find room for money. 2 new guys got to get whole new teams. There's so much that has to happen now. So introducing the 2 new guys, we got Tyler and Toby. Tyler here represented by a garbage can, because so far all he's done is take all of our garbage contracts that nobody wants, and we just throw it into Tyler, and he just takes it, and he's happy about it. And then we got Toby, who's just a rock, because I don't know if he's actually in the league. He doesn't do anything. He doesn't make trades or talk. He doesn't do anything. So these are the 2 new guys in the league. So far, a lot has happened, especially teams that never make moves being forced to make moves to clear cap, like Alex Clark and Matt. And really the only thing you need to know is that they let the rich get richer. The 2 guys in the finals have acquired more money and have acquired players like Alvin Kamara, Derrick Henry, Justin Jefferson, DK Metcalf, Calvin Ridley, Aaron Jones, and Josh Jacobs. So thank the NFL for making this change, making people make trades, and helping me and Warren get even better.